How addiction rewires your brain with Keith, who is the psychiatrist for Sunflower Sober, Unhinged Addiction, episode 12. I am your host, Eric Zink. I go by Eric B. Zink on YouTube. I go by the Mr. Impulsive on TikTok. Share a lot about addiction and back into it with podcasts. Here with episode 12, sharing with Keith, who did an unbelievable job on explaining addiction to me and how it really rewires our brain. Talking with Keith and working with him with Sunflower Sober, if you haven't downloaded the app, download the app, has truly changed some of my views on sobriety and on addiction, of how our brain works with it. And I just want to get into this interview because it is one of the best that I've done. Him and I are going to be doing a lot more of these. And this is Keith sharing on how your addiction truly rewires your brain.
All right, Keith, I get the chance to talk with you. We met through Sunflower Sober,
That's right,
and
Eric.
you are a psychologist.
I'm a psychiatrist, so I added layer of treating with medications. That's the only difference.
Awesome. And you have experience with addiction. I find it one of the most interesting addictions ever, and I've done a little research on this actually to prepare. So I'm very curious. So what was your experience with addiction?
Personally, Eric,
Personally.
personally, yeah, growing up was hard, and I will say that addiction made a dark cloud in my childhood. I think most people who have either had addictions or have grown up around addiction can really identify like what happens to a family when there is addiction taking place. It really sucks the air out of the room. And sometimes it creates family dynamics that really make life challenging growing up. So my family, we didn't grow up from much means. And many people in my family suffered with gambling addiction, alcohol use, stimulant use like cocaine. And that was just like the water that I grew up in. That was the norm. I didn't understand it when I was a kid, but what I learned very quickly is that the way that we go on with our lives is to keep secrets. And those secrets really made childhood really hard, because looking out at other people who weren't going through those things, they are seeing life through a very different lens. But when you grow up where, you don't want to speak out about something happening because you at the same time you love your family and you don't want to hurt them, it made life really hard. And it's one of the reasons why I went into healthcare and medicine, and specifically why we've met, is because I really think that addiction is just one of those things that has so much hurt. It adds so much hurt into the world. And it's one of those things that I, like with you, really want to solve and make people feel better.
And I love how you brought this up because I've struggled with it. So I'm an alcohol, cocaine addict. Those addictions make sense to me because I can relate. But gambling addiction, and ironically, we're doing this big promotion with Sunflower Sober on gambling, and trying to put ads together for this has become one of the hardest things because I don't fully understand. I understand addiction, but I don't understand this side of it. So growing up, did you have any idea that you had family members that struggled with gambling?
No, no. Growing up, you just look at your family and you say like, that's grandpa, or that's my aunt. And I never saw them through that lens. It's like I said, like it feels like you're in water, because when you're in it, you don't really notice what's different about addiction versus no addiction. It's only like looking back that you see like, oh, all of these things that have happened were not normal. Like that's not a normal way to cope. Those aren't normal secrets to hold. Um, Having to think about money that much and just constantly feeling like life was unstable is not something that a kid should be thinking about. And I think that as a kid, you're very good at adapting. So you adapt to the situations you're in. You learn how to predict how people's emotions are going to be in advance. That can lead to anxiety, that can lead to not sleeping because you're just worried about how someone's doing, even when it's not your role. Your role is just to be a kid. So that taught me a lot about what not only I went through, but also what other people go through. And it really is like my North Star when I'm working with patients and when I'm working with people who are suffering from addiction is I know that addiction isn't just one person. It's really an ecosystem of things. And if you don't address the big ecosystem, um, as well as the person in front of you, then addiction really takes a very deep root. Um, yeah.
So, gambling addiction, I've read a statistic somewhere, and I don't know if it's true or not, and I'd love your input. It said suicide rates with gambling are 10 times higher than any other addiction. Is
I
that
don't know if
true?
I don't know if it is 10 times, but I do know of all the substance use and addictions, it is the highest. And I think that's because of a couple things. With gambling, there's this added component of financial means, and your substance use affects your financial situation in such a larger way, or at least a faster way than other substances. So like you can have an alcohol addiction, you can have a stimulant addiction, and for the most part, find yourself at a good rate where your burn rate is lower or equal to how much money you're bringing in. But with gambling, the way that it's hijacking your reward system, it is taking everything you got and more. And so you're leveraging how much money you have. And so instead of just feeling like you're in a hole with your addiction, you feel like you're in an added hole with your financial hole that the gambling can cause. And I think that there are these really unfortunate moments in people with gambling addictions lives where they look at it and they say, I'm in this hole here and I'm also in this financial hole. I just don't see a way out. And I think that realization, it's not a real realization. It's like it's a fake feeling, but it can convince someone that there's just no way to get better. There's no way to get out of this hole. And that can lead to a lot of impulsive acts like trying to hurt yourself or trying to end your life.
So, how does gambling addiction then really start? I don't think, with alcohol, like for me, I was 14, started drinking. I wanted to fit in. It was very sociable. Gambling
Yeah.
to me seems more isolated. So I'm curious, how do most people who struggle with gambling, how does this addiction come to them? Or how do they end up finding this addiction?
It's interesting because gambling is part regulated, but at the same time, I think there's like micro doses of gambling in society. I'm not sure like how much you're aware of like the growth of like Labubu dolls and like Pokemon cards and people like I think that there are certain markets where um people want to access your reward system because it helps them make money. And so they know how your brain works. They purposefully try to trigger your dopamine system, and that helps you spend more money so that there you go. And by the way, I do appreciate collectibles. I collect things myself. But at the same time, I think that there are people who collect things and try to get things, and that becomes so severe to a point where it actually starts to hurt other aspects of your life, like your relationships, your ability to work. It's at that point where I could potentially say, like, I think that there's a problem here. It's gone beyond collecting something for its enjoyment. It's maybe gone to collecting something for like a compulsion, like I need to do this thing. And I think that combination with like just how social media is set up, everything is trying to hijack our reward system. And then now we have like online gambling. I think that the way that we invest these days is also similar to a slot machine. You have all of these different areas in society that are trying to get your attention and try to extract your reward system. I can see why it's hard to protect your mind from these things and even lead you down a road where you find yourself in a casino when maybe you weren't supposed to be there in the first place or you never wanted to be in a casino.
That makes actually a lot of sense. And I don't know what your thoughts are on this because, for example, with most kids, they're introduced to opiates before any other drug. Their wisdom teeth come out. Usually they're prescribed Vicodin, hydrocodone, and it's a powerful opiate. And it is so normalized. It's laughing, it's giggling, it's your family is making fun. It's all okay. And next thing you know, it your brain remembers this. Your brain remembers that it was a positive experience. So next time you do it, you have this positive experience again. And I think with kids, like I remember growing up, I was playing magic cards and stuff like that, and you're opening up packs and you're trying to get the right, and you feel good. And it kind of like rents a little bit of space in your brain that your brain knows and remembers that it felt good. And then later on in life, it starts to come back out in different ways. So that makes sense.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So when it comes to gambling, you finally get to the point that you're in a casino. I mean, what are some of the signs that you see, and even from your experience, that it's a difference between enjoyment and an addiction?
Maybe it'd be helpful to like take a step back and like try to break down what the brain is doing when you're finding yourself in a casino. Like, why does this occur? Um, so I'm gonna go super simple. Let me know if this is too simple. I can definitely go deeper if you want me to. But the way that I look at the brain is that there's like three big parts of the brain. Okay. And I'm gonna use my hand here to illustrate. I'm sorry, it's an ugly hand. But basically three parts. So my wrist, that is your brain stem. It's a very important part of your brain, but it's mostly like underneath consciousness. It helps you survive. It helps you tell you when you're hungry, how to get water, it regulates your temperature, your swallowing, all of those like automatic things. That's your brainstem. And then on the outside, you have your cortex. This is like the CEO part of your brain. It's doing all the critical thinking. It's why you are able to stop impulses, like control your compulsions. It kind of tells you like how you're going to plan your day. And then inside your brain, represented by my thumb, is another part of your brain called the limbic system. It's like the lizard part of your brain. And the limbic system's super important. It has two jobs, and those two jobs mainly are to help you survive. So it helps you find out what your rewards are and how to avoid risks. Additionally, it has a huge relationship component. So it's in charge of our connections with other human beings. All your emotions like anger, sadness, frustration, all in here, inside your reptile side of your brain. And what happens with addiction is that most substances, including gambling, they're not working on the cortex for the most part. They're mostly hijacking your limbic system. So it's like they inject this little person inside your limbic system who just starts calling the shots. So now you're taking control of your rewards, but also the relationships in your life. And I think that's a really important part of addiction is that it's not just like, I want that thing, but it's like, I'm going to choose this thing over the people that I love because your limbic system is hijacked. And the added interesting thing is that the limbic system has a GPS system too. So it will remember where the rewards are. It will remember where the risks are. Like you don't want bad things to happen. You want to just go towards the most fun, pleasant feeling thing. And, this is like, again, this is where addiction occurs. And I think that what most people get wrong, like when they're in the casino and they relapse, is like they feel like, I relapsed. I guess I just didn't want it enough. Like, I just didn't have it in me to get through this addiction. And I think that's completely wrong. The way that I look at it is that I think your limbic system just got you. Like, it was hijacked. And so part of what happens when you're in a casino is that your limbic system's GPS starts activating and says, there's rewards here, there's rewards here, there's rewards here. If it's the first time you've been gambling, you'll feel good. You'll be like, oh my gosh, there's so much going on here. And when you pull the lever and you make money, your dopamine surges. If this is the 100th time you've been to the casino, this is not your brain's first rodeo. And what your brain learns over time is that it's not enough to just get excited about winning. I will start getting excited when I'm in the casino or maybe driving to the casino or I see a billboard for the casino. That's the GPS system in your brain saying like reward, reward, reward. I'm going to go there. And so if you find yourself just noticing that your attention is somewhere else, your priorities are somewhere else, like you don't care about your work anymore, you don't care about your loved ones anymore, you're choosing this thing, those are all subtle signs that your limbic system is driving the show rather than your CEO of your brain, the cortex. And that's what makes addiction so hard to overcome, is that you have to reestablish your CEO as the boss over your limbic system.
That's the best explanation I've honestly have ever heard to any addiction explained. I'm going to borrow that
Of
because
course.
that is unbelievable. And I relate to everything you just said. So, how, and I'm trying not to jump too far ahead. And I loved how you stopped me, pull me back, because I will jump way too fast.
For sure.
How, so is it possible to actually get your CEO back in charge? And if so, like how long does it take? And is it always at risk then afterwards of being hijacked again?
Yeah, that is such a good question, Eric. And I think it's a question that even like the smartest addiction researchers are asking themselves. It's like, are we unlearning addiction when we get sober, or is something else happening? And I think what the latest research is actually showing is that you're not actually getting rid of your addiction. And this kind of coincides with common sense when you go to like an AA meeting. It's like you are addicted for life. It's not gone. Like you are an addict for a very long time. What I think that is the kernel of truth that's getting to is that the brain pathways are always there. If you imagine like a river cutting a canyon, that canyon will be there even if you take the river away. It'll be like this deep, deep canyon. Even if you divert water somewhere else and start a new canyon, there's always a risk that the water might go in that old canyon. And that's what we're learning about the brain, is that these old pathways of the limbic system taking over the cortex will remain. They can get weaker if you build a new pathway. So if you build your own canyon, and what that requires you to do is to choose new goals, choose better sources of stimuli for dopamine in your life. So make rewards that are sober related. So like have a community, have a hobby that you're interested in. Because one of the challenges of getting sober is now you have all this time, and all that time can lead to boredom. That time could be lead to cravings. And so what the best people do is that they find something to preoccupy that time, and they start carving their new canyon. They start carving new brain circuits that will compete against the old addiction. And what the best pathway for getting sober is you build this new canyon that is so deep that you don't even think about the addiction anymore. It's still there, but it like this canyon is so beautiful that you don't want to spend any time away from it. It has then reestablished a connection from your frontal cortex down to your limbic system. Having goals, having mindfulness, getting into therapy, these are all ways to strengthen that connection. Exercising, getting good sleep, very common sense things, but they really help you establish control over your limbic system.
So let me ask you this then. So we learn from a very young age these dopamine hits, and you find I'll go back even to the 14-year-old getting his wisdom teeth removed. He's on hydrocodone for a week or whatever. He's not addicted to it. It's not all of a sudden, he's going through with full on withdrawals and stealing mom and dad's meds. So what happens to our brain where it now pulls these memories, this knowledge that it has of what's going to make it feel good? What happens to the brain that it goes, I need to go to finding inside deep what made me feel good because I need this right now, and pulling it to the front to hijack the frontal cortex? Does that make sense?
Yeah. The main important thing is that your brain is a very finely tuned and calibrated organ. You could think about it like as a computer. Like it is finely tuned to your environment. It is finely tuned to what is important in your life. The challenge when you take something so potent as like an opioid, like a painkiller, and it's like new to you, is that is something from outside that is then flooding your brain with this just completely oversaturation and new sensation. You feel really good, and it's taking away pain. So like you're in your brain, you're like, oh, that thing I just got made me feel good, and it took away my pain. And so the brain starts to map out that GPS. First, it just notices like, oh, there was something I took, and I feel better. I'm going to look out for that again. I don't know where it is, but I'm going to look out for it. The second time you take it, the brain starts carving that pathway. It's like, okay, whenever I saw a nurse or whenever I saw, this person who's going to give me my medication, that's how I got my medication. So the fifth time that happens, you don't get dopamine release when you take the medicine. You get dopamine release when you see the person, when you see the nurse. You're like, oh my God, it's the nurse. I'm going to get my reward. And that is how your brain starts mapping out in reality what it wants. So it's no longer the pill that you're getting excited about. It's the person, or it's the smell, or it's the place. Like it's the dealer that calls you on the phone. Picking up your phone shoots dopamine in your brain. And that is why it's so hard to quit, because it's not just stopping the substance. It's like now you have to be aware of all of these cues and triggers in your life that cause dopamine to surge. It's a really unfair thing because it's sometimes impossible to really get away from those cues. But it's something that we try and teach in counseling and therapy, how to overcome it and how to rewire your brain so that it doesn't control you as strongly.
I need to meet you one day and we need to do videos together in person, because you have now put it that you have made more sense of my addiction here in the last 10 minutes than I have gotten in probably the last 10 years now. And that counts like AA and everything I've been through.
Yeah.
And the reason is I always wondered, I got to a point, and I'm supposed to be talking to you about gambling. I don't mean to veer off, but
Yeah.
I've always talked where I would do so much cocaine that it wouldn't get me high. But what got me actually the highest and felt the best was getting responses from the dealer and knowing that it was on the way and touching it. It wasn't actually doing it because my brain almost knew that now I'm doing it. There's not going to be anything after this.
Yeah.
So it was almost like sad and depression doing it. And so I'd have to just get more, and it just became this cycle. And it
Yeah.
makes complete sense now.
That's the
Um,
hardest. Yeah, it's not just cutting out the substance, but when you want to actually be sober, you cut out everything around that substance and then you fill it with something better. Your family, your kids, your hobbies, your sport. Because if you don't, then it's just going to be impossible not to run into those cues on accident. It's impossible. Like, what if you run into your dealer at the grocery store? Boom, your dopamine surges. If you don't have something important in front of you, relapse is like right around the corner. And yeah, I wish more people knew this because it's how your brain works. Like, I think we should have a user manual for our brain. Everyone deserves it. Which is why I think working on Sunflower Sober has just been so meaningful with you to help people understand, like, it's not all your fault. You can do something about it. You can rewire your brain in new ways.
yes, and you have to. I think part of the rewiring of your brain is to acknowledge and understand, because so much of therapy, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, is when you name something, you gain control over it and understanding over it, where it doesn't take you over like it once did, because now you can identify what is happening versus no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, you have literally changed my opinion on addiction, because I was one of those that, if you're not ready to quit, then you're just not ready to quit. And now it completely makes sense. And I think one of the I think essentially my river, and again, I feel bad kind of hijacking this, is blowing my mind though, was I just became so bent that I deserved a better life, that I thrived and just focused on that, and was so obsessed that I have to not use, that it just became my identity, and it kind of just formed elsewhere.
Wait.
Yeah. Oh wait. So well, let's go back to gambling here, because I could go on this for like days. So gambling addiction. I mean, again, it's I get the going into the casino and seeing all that, but and the fun and the joy in your brain.
Mm.
And this is maybe where I struggle, and I think it's giving me an understanding of how a lot of people struggle understanding addictions. You know how people just say, "Well, just don't do it then." For
Yeah.
me, gambling has always been very difficult, just for the fact of I never wanted to spend my own money. I worked really hard for this money, and I didn't want to waste it. and that's just kind of how I viewed it. I could not break through that barrier. But for some people, this is everything.
Mhm.
So so how does their brain establish this reward center and get to the point that it's hijacking their brain that's driving them to gambling?
Yeah. This kind of goes down the rabbit hole with that dopamine system we just started talking about. So I think that we know what the mission of dopamine is in your brain, which is to find rewards and then just hone in. Everything else be damned, I'm gonna get that reward. Um, what happens inside that system is very interesting. So, like I said, when you first try something for the first time and it's awesome, you have dopamine at the point of contact. So, boom, you made money on blackjack, you get dopamine surge. After a while, it moves away. So it's not when you get the money, it's when you anticipate it. And your brain is like, I'm gonna get this soon, so I'm gonna release dopamine and I'm gonna have my cortex that I have hijacked keep doing this thing. After a while, your brain gets to predict it. So you kind of already know, hey, I can know to expect I'm going to win soon. What's different about gambling is that it is finely tuned to hijack your dopamine system, just like a substance. And the way that does it is it utilizes a concept of intermittent random rewards. Fancy word of saying that you cannot predict when you're going to get the reward. And so that is what your brain loves because like if you imagine yourself back in the jungle when our ancestors were cavemen, if you found like fruit or you found like a watering hole that had animals, you want to like pay attention to that and you want your dopamine to say like, "Oh my God, that's random and it's a reward. I'm going to remember where that was." And so that same process happens in our brain when it's random, when you win money and you can't predict it, your brain releases more dopamine than before. And it's just it takes over and it keeps you hooked. It keeps you saying, like, just one more. I just know it's around the corner. I know I'm down 80% here, but if I just get one more, I'm going to be back up to 100% where I started, maybe even higher. And your brain is like constantly on the hook because it's random. You do win once in a while. It's not like you don't win and you like say bullshit, this is rigged. It's calibrated just enough to keep you on the hook and to keep you coming back. And that is what is so dangerous about gambling is that it's designed by other human beings because we know about the brain enough to keep people hooked on, just like a substance would, but it's actually money that we're talking about.
Download Sunflower Sober today. 24-hour support tools and resources, everything you need to get sober and stay sober. Sunflowersober.com or go to the App Store, Sunflower Sober, on iTunes, Apple Store, and also the Google Play Store. Start fighting for your sobriety today. Trust me, it gets better and you are worth it.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because I can break it back down even to my collectible card games. I will spend a ton of money on them. I don't do it to get my money back. I do it because I enjoy it. But it is funny where I feel like I won those still if say I spent $30 in packs of cards, and I pull a card that's worth $2, but I love the card. It's amazing how I feel like in my own weird sense, like I got my money back, even though I could have went to the store or found it online, bought that one, but it gave me a different reward coming out of this randomness. And I mean, is that why they have like with slot machines and even with scratchers and all this? You might just win your ticket back, or you might just win $2, and you're nowhere near what you're in, but it still feeds that reward center.
Exactly. So even though logically you might be down, I think the fact that you won still triggers the reward system. So in the moment, it feels like you have done good. Like even if you are still down 80%, if you got like a $10 win, it still feels like you've won. And this is how you accidentally start going down into that financial hole is because it's not just one time, not always just one time you're losing all your money, but it's like the continual trying and trying and trying. The dealer always wins. And so you can accidentally find yourself spending more money than you have. And then I think that what happens is that people lose big then they kind of finally look around. They say, "Oh my gosh, I cannot get out of this financial hole. There's no way out. I can't tell my family this. I can't tell my friends this. This is too much." And then they can have some impulsive thinking. That's not true. Like there are ways to get out. There are legal services to help people. There are therapists who are trained to get people out of these holes. It's just in that moment, again, your frontal cortex is not working. It's that relationship center, it's that reward and risk center that's controlling the shots. And it is impulsive. It is going to make you think the worst of how you're actually doing. So, what I always recommend is like, even with your worst thoughts, don't do it the day of. Like, give it 3 days, let your frontal cortex come back online, get help, call a hotline, talk to your therapist, get it outside your brain so that someone else can help you. And it's just one day at a time. Like we said, carving that river. It's one day at a time. But after continually doing that, you're going to have 100 days. You're going to have 200 days, and then this is going to feel like yesterday's problem because you've built a new pathway in your brain that is so much better and more fulfilling.
And I think there's a lot of truth to what you said on, give it 3 days. So I've adapted. One of my big struggles still, and I realized that this was a big part actually of my addiction, is my attachment style. I'm very anxious attachment. And one of the things I've learned as a coping tool to help gain control over my frontal cortex is I give everything 48 hours now. If it's something that triggers me and I can feel the trigger, I can feel my chest, all this, 48 hours. And luckily I'm sober. So this wasn't hard for me in the sense that I have sober 48 hours, no substances at all in my body, except for Adderall, which thank God, because if I didn't use that, I might struggle differently. But I give it 48 hours. And by that time, I've logically processed it all through. I know what my game plan is. This makes sense. And I start doing it and I start acting on it. Where I could almost see with gambling, you may not be an alcoholic or you may not smoke weed or but I could see almost like, you take this break back and you're like, oh my goodness, okay, trying to process it. But then you use something else to numb it that still hijacks your frontal cortex and you still make a bad decision.
Yeah. Um, that is like the common pathway. And like again, I think it's so important to talk about the brain because it's helpful. It's a helpful marker of separating what is you from like how our hardware works and how our software works. And sometimes I look at taking like those 2, 3 days off as giving your limbic system time to just have its tantrum. As soon as you give in and like give into that tantrum, like a kid is crying and you give into it, you're teaching that kid, hey, I can tantrum all I want and I'm going to get some numbing aspect of whatever. I'm going to get a reward for that. But the secret is you just let it have its tantrum. If you were like a trainer training a 800-pound gorilla, you don't fight with the gorilla. Like if you're the cortex and the gorilla is your limbic system, you will not win that fight. No, I'm sorry, you won't. You will not. You let the gorilla do what it wants. You calmly observe, let it get out its energy, and when the gorilla is calm, you can gently guide it where you want to go. Maybe you have bananas. Maybe you use, something that the gorilla likes to look at or to play with. But you use your cortex to help you monitor the situation against something you have no physical prowess over. That is how I see the cortex and the amygdala, the limbic system. When the limbic system is throwing a tantrum, the cortex will not win. It's very, very hard. Maybe even like a Buddhist monk might be able to do this, but not us. We're mortals. So you let the limbic system have its tantrum, let it calm down, and then use your frontal part of your brain to then guide it to where you want it to go. These are all skills that you can build to stay sober. And it's something people pick up implicitly. Like they just learn, like, oh, if I just give it time, if I ride out this craving, everything gets better. I don't have to use. Usually on the tail end of this wave, I feel a lot better.
So let's go to the thing that all addictions, and especially even gambling addiction especially,
Mhm.
has is the lying aspect. You lie to protect your addiction. And with gambling, I mean, you're going to be lying to your family about your finances, bills are getting past due, making up excuses of maybe why the power's not turning on, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Why is it such a natural default for addicts in the middle of addiction to just default immediately to lying and manipulating?
I think because there's a few things going on. I think that part of it is like your priorities have just shifted. The most important thing in your life is no longer the most important thing. And in that new spot is your addiction, gambling. And if you were to bring that into your world, like your relationships, your family, even society, if you like told your job that, I think that there's a fear that occurs, and I think it's a logical fear that people will judge you for that and people will see that as something wrong. And it's hard to rationalize that you're spending $10,000 every couple of months that you don't have. And so the way that we all cope is by denying that there's a problem. And severe denial turns into lying because you're not only lying to other people to keep going for your addiction, which is now your number one priority, but you're lying to yourself. You're lying to yourself that it's a problem because I think that there is a part of you that knows there's a better life. There's that knows that you deserve better, but you have to shut that part of you up in order to continue going down your addiction. And this kind of like gets into more deeper like therapy skill sets that people learn, but there is a part of you that deserves more. There is a part of you that knows it deserves more, but it is not compatible with addiction. Your addiction is hijacking the relationship part of your brain and it's saying, nope, I don't want that. I don't want to treat myself good. I don't want to treat other people good. I just need this thing that provides me some sort of relief from all the stresses of the world. So it's like really complex and everyone has their own like life that they've lived. But I think at the end of the day, it's just lying is how you keep your addiction going. Without lying, there will be too much evidence to tell you to stop doing what you're doing.
Now that makes a lot of sense. The and as a family with an addict like this and with a gambling addict, I mean, what are some of the things that they experience that they may even have trouble validating? Because gambling addiction to me has like a different stigma to it. And I don't know, maybe I'm not seeing it through different eyes, but I see it as one of those harder addictions to necessarily admit to. Where alcohol, for whatever reason, alcohol addiction has to me has become like the most standard, common, okay addiction to have. Next
Mhm.
is opiates because there's been so much awareness about alcohol addiction. There's so much awareness about the opiate, epidemics and all of this that if I come out and say this, oh man, dude, my brothers struggle with this. Whoever's, we always know people that have. Where with gambling, it's like a darker addiction because it's like you don't see it on the person per se. It's not rotting them away.
Yeah.
And it's harder for them to come forward where, as a family, they have a toll being taken out on them. What are the struggles that families don't really realize that they're dealing with when it comes to living with a gambling addict?
A good question. I want to ask you your experience too, Eric, because I think that everyone sees a different like reflection of addiction, like depending if you're the kid versus the spouse versus the friend, you're going to see a different like glint of the addiction. And I think what makes gambling really hard is that there is, like you said, there's this capacity to have a front, like to show other people like you still are fine, but what you're doing is you're separating your worlds. Like you got one fake world that you're presenting to people and then the real world. And whenever you do that, your brain, it's like it's got 10 browsers open. Your brain is not going to work well. You're not going to get enough concentration. You're not going to get sleep because you're anxious about someone finding out the lie. When you split your world in that way, life gets infinitely harder. And part of therapy is to put those worlds back together. Um, I think there's also an added component of like if you do have a family, there is a feeling of maybe falling down on your responsibilities, like you're supposed to be the caretaker, and that brings a lot of shame, uh, which is like, I think that if we look closer, we could say that the addiction is driving a lot of this hurt. And even from there might have been hurt that led to the addiction. So, it's really important to figure out like who the person is, like what they're going through. But if you're the person, you can look at that and be like, wow, I'm a shitty person because I can't keep the money that I'm bringing in, and now my family can't eat. Or now, like, we have bills that we can't pay, we have to move houses. That's a lot of weight on someone's plate. And I think that um, that can add more to how someone is feeling rather than just have the addiction alone. Like you can drink alcohol, have an addiction with alcohol, but it could also look social, and people could, affirm that because it is more visible in our society. But gambling isn't talked about, and gambling really hurts many aspects of your life financially, relationship wise, and then even your role as like a caretaker, it can really hurt you. But I'm curious, like what you've seen, and maybe like your reflections on how this can play out differently for other people.
From an addict standpoint, like I because everything you say I relate to completely, even with my addictions. You're not there. It's very exhausting. It's very tiring. The problem though, that like with me, is I use that all to victimize myself in the poor me, and I used to call it the Eeyore effect. That was the easiest way for me to enable myself, was to be the victim. Poor Eeyore, nobody loves
Yeah.
me, and my brain would just go to, well, let's just get high because this loves you. And it was just such an easy way to enable myself, because it's really exhausting to split those worlds. And the one thing that is hard is, as an addict, you're so selfish that even when you get sober, you're still selfish. And I think that's one of the most damaging things, and where a lot of relapses even come from, because now it's all of a sudden, look at me, look what I'm doing. I'm getting sober. I'm this, I'm this. Instead of going, man, Keith, I know I put you through this and this, and taking that ownership. And I think that's where a lot of times, even with me, and I mean, I tried getting sober at 23. I didn't get sober until I was 36. The first time I went to an AA meeting, I was 23 years old. I knew I had a
Yeah.
problem then, but no one was ever. I would use that even as a thing. I'd be 30 days, 60 days sober. I remember my first marriage is falling apart. My ex-wife told me I was an alcoholic. 60 days sober, and she wasn't giving the validation I needed of my sobriety. And so now all of a sudden, that just gave me a reason, well, then this doesn't really work, and I'd go back and use again. um, and I think that that's one of the big challenges of, when it comes to how our brain works. It's like hijacking everything to twist it into a negative.
Yeah.
And none of it matters, because you have this instant escape. Like, I'd be stressed about money. I'd be stressed about bills that time. There's times I was pawning watches because I was just spending too much on drugs, but I could still numb it. And that I think was just the scariest part. And I can't even comprehend of what I put some of these people through. And I still don't. I don't know. Like my last ex-wife, I put her through the most, and I have no idea really what truly I put her through, but I know it was not good. Um, and it can almost drive you to just keep using.
100%. And it's this cruel duality of addiction where it is simultaneously your responsibility to get better and stay sober. It's like be accountable. And it is also uh understood why this happens. And part of it is almost impossible to do alone, is because your brain is just hijacked. It's literally hijacked, and the wiring is backwards. What happens when people have like a coming to moment experience, and like maybe they find like spirituality, something very, very important in their lives, or they find a new community, or like a project that is just so encompassing that it makes them feel like a part of something bigger. What that is doing is moving your priorities back to frontal cortex down. It's getting you back in the driver's seat. Having more people in your lives allows other brains to reflect with you and help you see what's important in your lives and to reintroduce healthier aspects of dopamine surges in your brain, like feeling the dopamine surge of having a newborn kid or seeing your friend like make a three-pointer. Like those things get lost in addiction because the spikes were just not bigger than the spikes you were getting from the substance or the gambling. But if you go back and you put all of these important things back in your lives, your brain recovers. So we do know that it rewires and your brain will bring back the dopamine receptors that it had lost. So then all those other aspects of life do come back with color. And you just learn like what is important in your life. You know, having oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone, that hormone helps you rewire your brain. It's called neuroplasticity. So that's why connections are important. You have more accountability. It's getting all of these important things in life that addiction was stealing from you and putting them back so that the addiction becomes muted and less of an important thing. It's a really hard issue, and I think that selfishness is really a reflection of the limbic system. It's like the limbic system wants rewards, it wants to avoid risk, and it wants to hijack your relationships. I think that's where it comes from. The cortex is the part that like looks at life and says, "This is important to me. I'm going to do this, and I love my people. I'm gonna work for my people." Um, it's like a really hard thing, and I think that a lot of people tend to feel like it's their fault when it's partially the brain. The brain is hijacked too.
So let me ask you this then. How is it that our brain, how is it that we always go to, it was my fault. I could have did something better. Why is it that even non-addicts living with an addict take on this, I should have did more, I could have done more, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where does that come from then in our brain?
Um, when you have when any of us deny something, there's like this is like getting into I think very interesting like psychology, but it's like have you ever heard of the shadow, Eric? Um,
Where we put our emotions, you mean in our brain, like with EMDR or?
it's like the part of your personality that you try to ignore.
Yes.
Like like someone who says I hate money, I hate like working for money and having lots of like fancy cars, not important to me, when deep down their shadow wants to feel rewarded. Like I think that in life, in psychology, there is this balance that occurs. There are parts of you that you accept, parts of you that you deny. And when you deny it, you throw it down into your subconscious and you forget about it. That doesn't always stay down there. Sometimes it comes up, and sometimes people call it shadow. And I think that what happens is in addiction, we deny, 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 deny. It's not a problem. You know, I am just trying to feel better. I deserve this. Like, fuck the world. Like, this is important to me. um, that when you start to go reverse that denial, all of this stuff floods you and you can feel guilt. You can feel really guilty about all the things that have happened, the relationships that you've hurt. And those are logically hard things to look at. At the same time, I think that everyone deserves grace. So at the same time that it can be true that you've hurt your relationships, it is also true you deserve grace because addictions don't start in a vacuum. They always start somewhere. And that's what a therapist does is a therapist looks at you as a person who deserves grace and deserves to grow. And you can work with that person step by step to address the harm that was done by addiction, but also find love for yourself because that is so important to be um, part of life. A part of living is loving what you're doing and loving yourself and warts and all, accepting that and moving forward through your life. So it's really hard because you deny for so long, all of these things come back and it can be overwhelming. But that's just the first step. You know, get through that and all the great stuff comes after it. And I think you're a testament to that. Like you have created such a beautiful community that heals itself. Like you have touched so many lives and that would have never happened if you had not simultaneously held yourself accountable, but also find love for yourself and love for what you're doing. And I think that that is a good recipe for success for a lot of people.
I think it is, and I think that's the hard part. I don't think we sometimes teach people the intangibles that we really should sometimes.
Yeah, I agree.
We're taught 1+1 in school, but we're not taught how to emotionally regulate ourselves. We're not taught how to overcome things and to understand our brain as much as maybe we should.
Right. Yeah.
um, so let me end with this, because I would definitely want to do a few more of these with you, because it's you are one of the very few doctors that I've ever have met that I am just fascinated with how you word things, because it truly connects in my brain. Um, and so when somebody is struggling with gambling addiction, I think just like all addictions, there's a point every single day we know we're an addict. And there's these little things that kind of creep in. And for me, for example, it'd be when I would be really high, I would get super depressed, and I would want to get sober, and I would be begging to get sober. And I know that people, even with gambling, you hit these little points where you're just like, man, I would do anything to stop. And it's all of a sudden it's these fleeting thoughts, and it goes away because now you're just going to use more. What is a step that somebody can do when they have these thoughts to at least start the rewiring process of going, okay, I'm having this thought. Like, what is something like an exercise or a tool that somebody can do to maybe make that thought last a little bit longer so that it starts to really sink in, or to maybe make that impulsive call to somebody to ask for help, or to just change? Because we already know what the pattern is. The pattern always, I mean, I would have this, I didn't know what to really do. I'm sobbing, I'm high, I'm just going to use again.
Yeah.
But if there was something I could even have done, and I would have heard, I would have probably have at least tried it once. What would be one thing you would suggest somebody do?
That's a good question. I think depending on what kind of person you are, like you mentioned your attachment styles, I think depending on the person, there are a few things that will resonate for different people. So if you're a person who's logical, who is looking to find like the reason why things are wrong, I think learning about your brain is such a good step, because learning not only triggers dopamine, but it also activates the front part of your brain. The more you activate that part of your brain, the more you understand, like, oh, this is why I am the way I am. This is why I crave things. It gets you outside of that circuit, and it starts building a new top-down circuit. So like learning about why things are happening, like you don't have to commit to being sober yet, but just learn a little bit. It's not your fault. Like your brain is doing this thing. Some people respond well to that. I think some people respond well to connection. So like if you're feeling lonely, if you're feeling uh like you have no one to talk to, find one human being. It could be your priest, it could be a family member, it could be like calling a hotline. Just talk to one human being, because that person can then simultaneously look outside of your situation. Like sometimes your brain will give you the worst filter ever, but someone else might say like, hey, actually you're doing great, like you're using less, you have all of these great strengths. It takes another human being to notice that in you. um and then there's all these other low-hanging fruit. So like if you don't sleep, your dopamine system doesn't work well, and you're going to be more impulsive. You're going to be less able to control your addictions. Exercising builds healthy endorphins. It decreases pain. It decreases anxiety and depression. Those are all things. So just even like going for a small walk, getting outside, getting sunlight on your face, get that vitamin D going. um, there are like all these small things you can do. And I think that the mistake you don't want to make is doing too much all at once. Start small, start with a concrete goal, and you have thousands of days to do this. So just the first day, start small. The second day, you can do a little bit more. And it really that's it can grow and compound. And then one day you might find yourself saying, like, I think I'm ready to quit. And that's when you should use Sunflower Sober. Find a therapist if you think that's for you. Find a doctor if you think that's for you. But get as many supports in your life as possible, because it's a hard thing to do, but it's such a rewarding thing to do. It just the compounding rewards is just so much that it's exciting when someone does decide to quit and then they also stay in that sobriety.
No, and I think you hit it on the head. I don't know if there is anything, and I'm sure you have a better input than I do. Especially when you do get those spurts of, okay, I'm going to do this, and you try to take it all on.
Mhm.
You essentially, I think, subconsciously set yourself up for failure. You're trying to achieve all this dopamine of success, all this stuff, and it just doesn't happen.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then it's almost like your brain goes, "See, I told you so."
exactly.
It's
Yeah,
trying to understand that you're instantly going to do that, and to try and just back it down, like you were saying,
yeah.
to
If I told
something.
Eric, oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, if I told you, Eric, I'm gonna run a marathon tomorrow and I've never trained for a marathon, you would look at me and be like, "What are you talking about?"
Right.
Uh, Cancel that, do it in 3 months, and then start small. Start running 1 mile, please. I think that that's kind of what it can feel like if you're trying to cut cold turkey. You're trying to run a marathon without any prep. And anything hard in life requires prep, it requires support and like a routine. So don't beat yourself up just because it's hard. It's supposed to be hard. Doing it is a hard and worthy thing, but it's just such a beautiful thing too. Like after you run a marathon, you are so proud of yourself. After you become sober, there's so much pride that comes flooding in. Um, but it's not something you do overnight. It's something that you compound on slowly.